Eldermoor Swamp was a place shrouded in mystery and fear. Locals spoke in hushed tones of the swamp's dense, unrelenting fog that seemed to have a mind of its own. Legends claimed it swallowed those who entered, their cries for help fading into the mist, never to be heard again. Despite these warnings, a desperate search party ventured into the swamp one cold autumn evening, seeking a young boy who had disappeared 2 days prior. The group consisted of 5, Hannah, a seasoned forest ranger, Mark, the boy's distraught father, Ellie, a volunteer nurse, Jason, a journalist eager for a story, and Tom, a retired soldier who brought along his hunting rifle. As they approached the edge of the swamp, the fog hung low, curling around their feet like grasping fingers. The air was thick and damp, carrying an unnatural chill that seemed to seep into their bones. "Stay close," Hannah warned, her voice steady but her eyes betraying unease. "This fog can disorient you faster than you'd think." With lanterns and flashlights cutting feeble beams through the haze, they entered the swamp. The ground squelched beneath their boots, and the only sounds were the distant croaks of frogs and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. Overhead, the trees' gnarled branches intertwined, blocking out what little light remained from the setting sun. Barely an hour in, they heard it, a faint voice calling out, "Help me." It was the voice of a child, unmistakably close yet distorted, as though carried through water. "That's him!" Mark exclaimed, breaking into a run before anyone could stop him. "Mark, wait!" Hannah shouted, chasing after him. The others followed, their lights bobbing wildly. The voice grew louder, more urgent, but the fog thickened, swallowing their surroundings. The group found themselves in a small clearing, the voice now silent. Mark stood in the center, turning in circles. "He was right here," Mark insisted, his voice trembling. "I heard him." Hannah grabbed his arm. "We can't split up. That's exactly how people get lost out here." Ellie pointed to the ground. "What is that?" They shone their lights down to reveal footprints, small, barefoot tracks leading deeper into the swamp. Without waiting, Mark followed them. The rest had no choice but to trail after him. As they walked, the fog seemed to close in tighter, muffling their voices and movements. Then came the whispers. At first, they thought it was the wind, but the words grew clearer, spoken in voices they recognized. "Mark," came a woman's voice, soft and sorrowful. Mark froze. That's my wife." "She's gone, Mark," Ellie said gently. "You know that." The whispers multiplied, surrounding them. Jason heard his mother's voice, begging him to come home. Tom clenched his fists as he heard the voice of a fallen comrade calling his name. Even Hannah, steadfast and stoic, paled as she heard the laughter of a child, her niece, who had died years ago. "It's not real," Hannah said, her voice firm but strained. "Don't listen to it." But the voices grew louder, more insistent. Shadows began to flicker in the mist, humanoid shapes that moved just out of reach. The group huddled together, their lights darting around, unable to catch a clear view of their tormentors. The footprints led to the edge of a black, stagnant pool. The water's surface was unnaturally still, reflecting the pale glow of their lanterns. The whispers stopped, replaced by a suffocating silence. "Where now?" Jason asked, his voice shaking. Before anyone could answer, a hand broke the surface of the water, a small, pale hand. Mark rushed forward, plunging his arms into the freezing water to grab it. "Mark, no!" Hannah screamed. The hand gripped him with inhuman strength, pulling him forward. The others grabbed him, pulling him back with all their might. From the water rose a figure, a childlike silhouette, but its face was wrong. Its eyes were hollow pits, and its mouth stretched unnaturally wide in a soundless scream. More hands emerged from the water, reaching for the group. They pulled Mark free and ran, the water erupting behind them as the figures gave chase. The swamp seemed to shift around them, paths disappearing and reappearing, the fog twisting into shapes that blocked their way. As they fled, Tom stopped and raised his rifle. "Keep going," he shouted, firing into the fog. The gunshots echoed, but the shadows only multiplied. One broke through, tackling Tom into the murk. His screams were cut short. The remaining four stumbled into another clearing, panting and desperate. Their lights flickered, then died, leaving them in complete darkness. The whispers returned, now a cacophony of mocking laughter and cries. "It wants us to lose hope," Hannah said, gripping Mark's arm. "We can't give in." But Jason, clutching his camera, began to wander toward the voices. "I see her," he murmured, stepping into the fog. The others tried to stop him, but he disappeared, his cries fading into the distance. Now only Hannah, Mark, and Ellie remained. They pressed on, stumbling across a decrepit wooden dock jutting into another pool of water. In the distance, they saw a faint light. "That must be the way out," Ellie whispered. But as they stepped onto the dock, the wood groaned and cracked. From the water rose the figures again, their hollow eyes fixed on the group. Hannah pushed the other two forward. "Run!" The dock collapsed, plunging them into the freezing water. The figures closed in, pulling Ellie under despite her screams. Hannah and Mark surfaced, gasping, and swam toward the light. As they reached the shore, Mark turned back. "Ellie," he murmured, but Hannah pulled him away. "She's gone." The light revealed the edge of the swamp. They stumbled out, collapsing onto solid ground. Behind them, the fog swirled angrily, the voices screaming in frustration before fading into silence. Hannah and Mark returned to the village, hollow and broken. The boy was never found, and neither were the others. Eldermoor Swamp remained, its fog waiting patiently for the next unfortunate souls who dared to enter.